The reason you can't forget certain people may have nothing to do with them anymore, and yet they keep returning. A song reminds you of them. A place triggers a memory. A random moment of silence brings them back. What makes it strange is that you may not even want them back in your life. You may not miss them. You may not think about them often, yet somehow they remain. The question is why? Why do certain people stay in our minds long after they have left our lives? Most people assume the answer is simple. They think it means they haven't moved on, that they are still attached, still hurt, still emotionally stuck. But that explanation often feels incomplete, because sometimes the people who return to our minds are not the people we love most, not the people we spent the most time with, not even the people who treated us the best. So why them? Why do some faces fade while others remain? Part of the answer lies in how memory actually works. We like to think we remember people, but memory is rarely that literal. The mind does not store experiences like photographs. It stores meaning, emotion, association, the things that mattered beneath the surface. And sometimes a person becomes connected to something larger than themselves, something that continues living inside us long after they are gone. Many people spend years asking the wrong question. They ask, why can't I forget them? But a more useful question might be, what did they come to mean to me? Because the people who stay in our minds are rarely the people themselves. They are the emotions, possibilities, and questions we attach to them. Because sometimes the person represented belonging. Sometimes they represented acceptance. Sometimes they represented a future you thought was possible. And sometimes they represented a wound that never fully healed. The mind keeps returning to what feels unfinished, not because it wants to suffer, but because it wants to understand. Sometimes what stays with us is not the relationship. It is what the relationship represented. Belonging, hope, validation, connection, possibility. The mind forms links between people and emotions. And once those links become strong enough, thinking about one automatically activates the other. Without realizing it, we stop remembering the person and start remembering what they came to symbolize. Sometimes we think we miss a person. What we actually miss is the version of ourselves that existed around them. And without realizing it, we confuse one for the other. This is where people often become confused. They assume that thinking about someone means wanting them back. But those are not the same thing. You can know a relationship was unhealthy. You can know it ended for a reason. You can know you would never go back and still think about that person, because what keeps returning is not always attachment. Sometimes it is unresolved meaning. Sometimes it is a chapter of your life that still feels incomplete. This is also why closure is so misunderstood. Many people believe closure comes from one final conversation, one final explanation, one final answer. But sometimes the conversation ended years ago, and the mind is still searching, not for the person, but for the meaning behind the experience, the meaning it never fully resolved, the question it never fully answered, the part of the story that still feels unfinished. The mind does something interesting with unfinished experiences. It revisits them again and again, not because it enjoys holding on, but because unfinished things naturally pull at our attention. A question without an answer, a story without an ending, a possibility that never became reality. These things remain psychologically active, and the people connected to them often remain active too. This is why forgetting someone and understanding someone are not the same thing. Sometimes the memory remains because the meaning remains unresolved. Perhaps the most surprising realization is this. Sometimes you're not remembering the person at all. Sometimes you're remembering who you were when they were part of your life, the version of yourself that existed during that chapter, the dreams you carried, the fears you carried, the person you were becoming, a version of yourself that existed before certain disappointments, before certain losses, before certain realizations changed the way you saw the world. Sometimes the memory feels alive because part of that version of you still feels unfinished. And this leads to the deeper truth. The mind doesn't stay attached to people. It stays attached to unfinished meaning, a belief that was never resolved, a wound that was never understood, a possibility that was never explored, a question that was never answered. The person became the doorway. And most of us spend years looking at the doorway instead of what it leads to. The real answer is hidden behind it. That is why forgetting them often feels impossible. Because the mind is not protecting the person. It is protecting the meaning connected to them. Maybe this is why some people never seem to leave our minds completely. Not because they belong in our future, not because we are meant to return to them, and not because we failed to move on, but because they became part of a story that helped shape who we are. Perhaps forgetting was never the real goal. Perhaps understanding was. Understanding what they represented. Understanding what changed. Understanding what remains unfinished inside us. Because sometimes the person was never the message. Sometimes they were the messenger. And what continues returning is not their presence. It is the meaning they left behind. Once that meaning is understood, the memory often begins to feel different. Less like something chasing you, and more like something that came to teach you. If this reflection resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who may need it. And tell me in the comments, is there someone you still think about? And what do you think they came to represent in your life?